What's up, guys? Thanks for joining me again this week for Week 3 recap for the Marcus Mariota Fan Club Fantasy Football League. Um, just make sure that you guys subscribe, tell your friends about the episodes I'm posting up. Just get me some exposure. Let me know that you guys appreciate it. Really appreciate your feedback so far. It's been awesome. So the first video has like 40 views. There's not 40 people in the Fantasy Football League, so that's kind of neat. 10 subscribers, which means at least 2 of you guys are screwing with me. So subscribe to the channel, give me some exposure. I'd appreciate it. Start off, as always, want to give a shout out to partners of the program. Cuddy Eats on YouTube. Check out his videos, guys. He's awesome. He's great. Puts out great content. Takes requests. His videos are always entertaining. Show the boy some love. So now back to fantasy football. So it's week 4, 3 weeks in the bag. You guys know what that means. Power rankings are on their way. As a result, we're going to try something a little different today. And forgive me if there's some technical difficulties. I'm still trying to iron out all the creases. So with that, we'll get started by looking back at the previous week's record. So last week we were 4-2, which gives me a nice solid 67% win rate last week. We'll also take a little look at last week's picks. So I picked Logan to beat me. I picked Jonathan to beat Cole. I picked Blake to beat Clint. And I picked Daniel to beat Jeremy, Thomas to beat Brandon, and Dustin to beat Matt. So with that, we will jump down into looking at last week's games. So I have the picks on the bottom right and the record that'll be updating as we go through the video. Start out looking here at week 1. I picked Logan to beat me. My team really showed up. I did not expect Jameis Winston and Mike Evans to connect for 3 touchdowns. That was really kind of the catalyst. Mike Evans putting up 41 points. I do think he's really good. Doubt that happens again for the rest of the season. And if that wasn't enough, my man, Cooper Kupp, came through in the clutch, got me 2 touchdowns against Cleveland, and really helped me pull out this big win over Logan's team. Logan's team did do a lot of things really nicely. Logan made the decision to start McLaurin over Stephon Diggs, which I was not super high on. I want to give a shout out to Logan for picking that one up. Terry McLaurin actually played super, super well, which is impressive because nobody else on Washington's team did. Austin Eckler had an uncharacteristically low-key weekend, so Logan will hope that kind of picks up. Nothing that really stands out on the bench. Josh Gordon did put up decent numbers with the departure of Antonio Brown. The Cowboys defense is playing really well, but they were against Miami, so it's hard to gauge where that stands. Otherwise, nothing really surprising. Logan did lose, which unfortunately brings me to 4-3 on the season. So moving into game 2, this one managed to get right. Picked Jonathan to beat Cole. Cole's team, Dak Prescott's kind of the lifeblood right now, and as he gets into some more competitive competition, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. 26.5 points, not bad. Against Miami, probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more, but definitely not bad. Derrick Henry salvaged a pretty decent day after not hitting 80 rushing yards for the first time in a really long time, so that was kind of surprising. Really disappointed in the Titans' performance against Jacksonville. Late scratch for Damian Williams definitely hurt Cole. And also the Titans' defense making Gardner Minshew look like freaking all-pro. That was also really frustrating to watch. Looking at his bench, Jacoby Brissett is playing super, super, super well. So I actually think that may be an option if Dak Prescott does run into trouble. Another thing to consider about Dallas isn't necessarily my personal opinion on Dak. That's not fair. But the running game is super effective. So if you have 2 running backs rushing for 100 yards, why not keep running the ball? And that's going to hamstring Dak a little bit. Regardless of what I think about him, he's not going to have to do too much. On Jonathan's team, Kirk Cousins is really struggling. He can't really get it together. They put up a lot of points in one. Dalvin Cook really looks like the guy there. The decision to sit Russell Wilson and 49.3 points, definitely going to come back to haunt Jonathan if he had lost. He didn't. Darren Waller showed out. Amari Cooper showed out. And that was enough to get Jonathan the win. And that brings me overall to 5-3. So now we'll move on to Game 3 here. Game 3, again, I picked Blake to beat Clint. Thought this was going to be one of the easier ones because Blake's team is really, really strong. Clint's team is really, really not. However, Clint's team actually put up really, really big points on the back of Mark Ingram. And the Bears' defense absolutely destroying the Washington offense. So the Bears' defense is actually going to be a really consistent performer for Clint. Marvin Jones also had a good week. Not that Clint missed on any of his receivers necessarily. Obviously, if he puts him in for D.D. Westbrook, he improves his points, but that's really being nitpicky. Marcus Mariota, not a good choice at quarterback. He looked really, really bad. The offensive line didn't look great. The receivers looked horrible. Something's going to have to give in Tennessee before you can really roll with Marcus. Also, Joku is out for several weeks. Clint's going to want to find a replacement pretty quickly, and on his bench he has Jordan Reed. That's not going to help at all either. Blake's team, Deshaun Watson is he's awesome. He looks great. Alvin Kamara, awesome, looks great. Dalvin Cook looks awesome. And the biggest takeaway here is two things. Evan Ingram with Daniel Jones under center is a huge improvement for Evan Ingram's fantasy outlook, which was already pretty good. So that's great for Blake. And then also the Patriots defense is playing super well. Regardless of the competition, they are playing super, super well. So I did bring home that one, which is going to improve me to 6-3. Again, don't think it was a very difficult decision to go with Blake. His team's just playing really, really well right now. So as we get into Game 4, this one I picked Daniel to beat Jeremy. I don't know if you guys kept up with it in real time as it was kind of coming down to the wire, but it was actually a really, really fun fantasy matchup to watch because it was kind of going back and forth. Really enjoyed that. So Daniel got started off strong with the Jaguars defense destroying Tennessee. Tom Brady played okay. Running backs for Daniel are still a concern. So that's unfortunate. And I got to be honest with you, I picked Daniel to win, and looking back on it, I'm kind of surprised I did that, knowing Cam wasn't going to play because Daniel has two Carolina wide receivers in there. But they played really well, and Kyle Allen does not look lost, so that's encouraging for Daniel moving forward. However, on Jeremy's side, Tyler Lockett went off, Austin Hooper really went off, and then Phillip Lindsey was the only source of offense for the Denver Broncos. So that was really impressive points from him. As far as the bench goes, nothing really stands out. Jeremy got enough to get the job done. He could use a little help at running back, but Kerryon Johnson should be able to slot in there okay moving forward. And Chris Carson and Peyton Barber are both seeing the ball enough to be somewhat effective. So good win for Jeremy. Does knock me down to 6-4, but you know, I can live with that. It was a close matchup. It was fun to watch. Glad we got to see that one play out. So speaking of fun matchups to watch play out, this one was so fun to watch. Brandon Cooks really brought it home for Brandon rather. I picked Thomas to win. Thomas's team still looks really, really strong. Calvin Ridley not doing much, really hurt. Vance McDonald really hurt, especially now the Steelers bringing in an additional tight end. Those are two areas that Thomas is probably going to be a little concerned about. Chris Godwin, I think he's going to be fine. He didn't put up great points this week, but I don't think it was his fault. I think it was more because Mike Evans was popping off. But Thomas has a plethora of weapons at running back down here. He also has Devonta Freeman. He's got Leonard Fournette. He's got Miles Sanders. So he's got some people that he can kind of move around. Oh, man, I didn't realize. Greg Olsen in there for Vance McDonald. That would have been a huge boost. I actually love Greg Olsen moving forward. He looks great. He was all-pro before he got hurt a few years ago, and I think that's going to continue. Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey popping off. Panthers defense, big points against Arizona, really exploited that. For Brandon's team, Lamar Jackson looks like the real deal. Ezekiel Elliott had a touchdown get poached by Tony Pollard. That kind of sucks, but Keenan Allen is just going off, and he's going to be able to ride him moving forward. So I do love that you got the Tony Pollard handcuff. The only thing is they're both playing really well. So it's going to be like week to week. What am I going to do? Who's going to get the touchdowns? But obviously you have to roll with Zeke as long as he's healthy. Did hand me the loss. That does bring me down to 6-5. So moving on to the last game of the week. This one, not really surprising. I picked Dustin to win this one. Matt's team just has a lot of gaps. Adam Thielen still put up pretty good points. Marlon Mack is looking really, really good. Ravens defense, that's just a tough matchup. I think the Ravens defense is actually really talented. But anybody that plays Kansas City is going to look stupid. A lot of injuries. Matt's got to do some work on his bench. His bench is looking weak. Really, really weak. Todd Gurley, we still don't know what to expect from him. Love Josh Allen in Buffalo. I don't think what Josh Allen's doing is going to translate to a lot of fantasy points, but I love watching him play. I don't know if you guys got to see the Buffalo-Cincinnati game, but he's really, really fun to watch. For Dustin, Aaron Rodgers, 15.3 points, and he still didn't have the offense figured out. That's not bad. Julio going off. Just really consistent team. Nobody that's really stands out. Sterling Shepard on the bench, 23.6 points. Daniel Jones and him do appear to have some chemistry, and with Evan Ingram getting going, should open up a little bit more space. So I think that he'll come off the bench. Lesean McCoy, 21.5 points. Who in the world saw that coming? Damian Williams was a late scratch, so that definitely helped Lesean McCoy. If Williams is healthy, I think that takes away some of his upside moving forward. Adam Humphries got involved in the offense, but there's not a lot of bright spots on that Tennessee offense right now, so it's hard to say. But Dustin's got a really good team. Robert Woods being in the Rams offense, it's hard to tell what he's going to do each week but they are going to score points, so I think he'll be effective moving forward. So, but the pick on Dustin does bring me to 7-5. Little worse win percentage, same spread. Hopefully we'll get it. I went 500 this week, so that'll take me down a little bit. But moving forward, hopefully we'll get the ship right. So that is it for recapping last week. We're going to go ahead and get rid of those windows. So I'm not going to do the preview right now. I'm going to wait until tomorrow when everybody can kind of update their roster, make some additions. We find out more about injuries and stuff like that. So I'll try to put out a short video tomorrow where I kind of break down what's coming up. But something I've been really excited about doing is getting into the power rankings. It's always really fun for me to do. And I like to kind of give it a couple weeks to kind of shake out. So without further ado, we are going to do them. Hold on one second. We are going to do them in reverse order. So let's jump right into the first one, which is going to be. Hold on. Like I said, working out the kinks here. So here's our power rankings. And the first one is going to be Clint. So Clint's team, 0-3 start, not putting up a whole lot of points, not looking very convincing. This is probably a little harsh because he did put up really good points last week. 130 is nothing to sneeze at. He just lost to whoever put up the most points in the week. But I think that was kind of a fluke performance from Mark Ingram. I think he'll put up okay points, but I don't think he's going to be that good. And the Bears defense, regardless of how good they are, which is probably the best defense in the league, 30 points from a fantasy defense is insane. So when you look at the rest of his team, there's not a whole lot that's very encouraging. Marcus Mariota, below average quarterback in the league in terms of fantasy points. David Montgomery's just not getting enough touches. Until the Steelers' offense really gets rolling, Juju's probably not going to be an elite wide receiver. Even though I do think Juju and Michael Thomas, that's a pretty good tandem. Njoku being hurt, no other tight end on the bench, just some open spots, a lot of guys on IR. Clinch has got a lot of work to do on his roster. And so the next team we're going to look at is Matt. So the Washington Redskins, which is a great name, awesome name. Christy and I are watching back through South Park, and that's like just the start of when South Park just becomes next level. So love it. Everybody should check that out if you haven't already. So looking at his team, I like Josh Allen. I like Todd Gurley. I like Jarvis Landry. I like a lot of the players that he's got on the team. The problem is it's not translating to fantasy production. And so I don't know necessarily that I see anything that's encouraging moving forward. We just don't know what's up with Todd Gurley and why he doesn't look like himself. Everybody told us the arthritis wasn't a big deal, but clearly it is. Marlon Mack is great. He looks awesome. Indianapolis is playing really well right now, much to my chagrin. Adam Thielen finally got the ship kind of on track. I think that those points will be a little more consistent, but you got a pretty tough matchup this week in Chicago, so it's just not making me feel great about Minnesota. Cleveland's got issues. Ertz has issues. Philadelphia looks okay, but they don't look great. And Ertz is kind of struggling to find like his niche. He used to be a guy that grabs double-digit catches. Not the case so far. And then a lot of injuries for Matt on the bench. Got to do some work on the bench, as I said in the previous week recap. So that brings us to number 10, the darling of our fantasy football league, Team C+, and Daniel. So Daniel's team is kind of struggling. They've put up good points. Unfortunate loss this week. But when we just kind of break down the roster, if we're kind of looking at where he's been, where he has been in the past, and like where he's kind of going, a lot of things have had to kind of go right for his team to put up respectable points. So Jaguars defense, Denver's not a bad matchup, but it's probably not as friendly as the Titans. The Titans have issues right now. They're missing one of their, they were missing 2 starting offensive linemen last week. The Broncos are not. Joe Flacco is probably a little bit more effective than Mariota, even though I wouldn't necessarily say he's better. I think he's effective. Running backs, not a whole lot to love there. 2 Carolina wide receivers. Kyle Allen did play well, but still, you got 2 receivers from the same team. You got to hope that offense is putting up a lot of points, and they're not at the moment. James White missed the game with, I think, the birth of a child. I can't recall, but until Melvin Gordon comes back, there's gaps. Now, one thing to point out though, Daniel does have Mark Andrews for Baltimore, who has looked really, really good. So obviously not a big week last week, but he has looked really good when he's played big points. So I do feel good about Mark Andrews moving forward. That's a place other people are weak, so he could always flip that and try and get a couple assets. I think Thomas would be a good trade partner for him. Something to consider when you're moving forward, Daniel. Number 9, this team has really struggled as we moved on, so it's going to be Cole with Gryffindors. Love the name. And the team icon, by the way, just great choice. He's actually put up fewer and fewer points each week as we move through, which is concerning because, like I said, Dak Prescott's schedule does start to get tougher as we move forward in the season. So I think there's work to be done. I think Derrick Henry and David Johnson. Okay, hold on. David Johnson and Derrick Henry, that's a great running back tandem. I think Derrick Henry's going to have a really big year this year. The Titans' defense actually looks really good. If the offense can help them out a little bit, they've got the makings of a really good team. Harrison Butker is going to put up points all year. The Kansas City offense is just so high-powered. Where the problems start to come in are Jack Doyle, tight end, not a whole lot doing. Wide receiver, Devontae Adams just looks like invisible in the offense. Kenny Golladay, same kind of story. Even when Detroit put up good points this week, Kenny Golladay nowhere to be found. That's concerning. And Damian Williams, obviously, late scratch. And not really a whole lot of guys to plug in from the bench. So Cole definitely has some issues. That's why you're finding yourself slotted into that lower third of the league. So looking at number 8, Jeremy got a big win this week against Daniel to kind of keep Daniel down. But Jeremy's team, I gave him a really good draft grade. And his team got off to a really slow start. I don't think he put up very many points in week 1, but he's gotten better each week. He is 1-2, but his loss last week was kind of tough. And this week he did pull out the win. Phillip Lindsey, big time player in Denver. Kind of everything has to go through him right now. They're really just kind of struggling. Tyreek Hill is eventually going to come back, but he's out for a really long time. Larry Fitzgerald, I'm telling you, he's playing well. Put him in. He's playing really well right now. Your biggest concerns looking at Jeremy's team are Jared Goff is not putting up a whole lot of fantasy points. That doesn't make sense to me. The Rams have a great offense. I think he's really struggling with the fact that Todd Gurley can't do anything in the run game, and they need that to kind of open up their vertical passing game. The other thing is obviously running back. So Phillip Lindsey's a beast, but Chris Carson, Peyton Barber, they're getting the ball a lot. They're just not doing much with it. And so how that goes is really kind of capping Jeremy's ceiling. So I do think he's got a lot of positivity there. Tyler Lockett, Marquise Brown, to be specific, but definitely a lot of things that are a little concerning. Larry Fitzgerald, put him in. I'm telling you, he's a big timer. Number 7 is going to be Team Beast Mode. So John's team. Moving up in the world, 1-2, okay win, but he's actually put in consistently above 100-point performances. And when you look at his team, he actually has a lot of big-time talent. So Russell Wilson, top 3 fantasy quarterback. So his points would actually look even more respectable if he had played Russell Wilson last week. So that hurts. When you look at running back, Duke Johnson Jr., not great, but Joe Mixon is playing pretty well right now. I think that he'll get better as the year goes on. Amari Cooper is playing like a beast. John Ross is actually up in like the top of the league for receiving yards, despite having a really bad week. So as much as I don't think he's that great, you can't argue with his numbers right now. Darren Waller looked really good, and they've been really high on him in Oakland all offseason. So maybe this is like an example of what's to come. Mike Williams, I was really high on coming into the season. Hasn't done much so far. But don't sleep on him. I think that he will kind of scrape something together. Bills defense, they played well. Tough matchup with New England. New England's playing really good football right now. Zane Gonzalez putting up a lot of points. San Francisco's kind of struggling. The biggest thing that's keeping Jonathan in the lower half of the power rankings is the injury to Saquon Barkley. So allegedly he's out for a handful of weeks. And as long as that's going on, that's going to hurt him. He did pick up the Wayne Gallman handcuff, but how much is that really going to get you? So that's where Jonathan's shortcomings really come into play right there. So looking at number 7, and this one, or number 6 rather, and looking at this one, it's probably a little unfair. I think his team's actually quite good, but I did beat him, so I put myself ahead of him. But Logan's team I do think is really good. So Matt Ryan, great quarterback. Coming down a little bit further, he's got Stafford on the bench, good quarterback. Hasn't gotten it done so far, but I feel good about him and what he's going to do. Last week was encouraging. Running backs, Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler are both good running backs. Austin Eckler is obviously a great running back. Aaron Jones is good. DeAndre Hopkins, 18th right now in fantasy points, but he's shown before that he's eventually going to just pop off and be in the top 5. And all it is a matter of time. It's a matter of when. Terry McLaurin has been a great addition for Logan so far. He's looked really, really solid. He played great football last week. James O'Shaughnessy, I actually think is a really nice pickup. So I'm going to applaud that one. Chargers defense, I thought they would be better, but you got a matchup against Miami, so that's good. Fairburn, I'm surprised he hasn't put up more points. And then Stephon Diggs, I'm not even going to knock you on it right now because honestly, T.Y. Hilton's your guy, and I know that. He's got a little bit of a knock. I think he'll be fine. So we'll just slot T.Y. Hilton in there. So I actually think Logan's team is probably a little bit better than 6th. Like I said, I put you there because you lost to me last week, which I put up a lot of points. So that's not fair. Logan also lost in week 1, just so everyone's aware, to the person that put up the second most points. So that's twice that's happened to him. And he's put up respectable points in both of those. So this is harsh, and I realize that, Logan, your team is better than this. I put you here just because of your record, and you did lose last week. So I think it'll shake out, and you'll slide up higher than you currently are. So now we're going to get to the top 5 of the league, and sliding in at 5th is me. I do think that Mayfield Baker of Chains is the worst good team. I'm 2-1. And I could have easily been 3-1 if Drew Brees doesn't get hurt. But I don't think I have a whole lot of staying power. So if you look at my team just right off the bat, Le'Veon Bell on bye, George Kittle on bye. So my running backs are Kenyon Drake and Carlos Hyde, not exactly inspiring a lot of confidence. My tight end is Kyle Rudolph, who hasn't inspired confidence for like 3 years. Running Right now, I'm rolling with Winston as my quarterback. I do have Baker, who I use my keeper on, but man, he looks really bad. So I guess I'm really just hoping for Jameis to hook up with Mike Evans. I'm hoping that this Tyrell Williams bet pays off. Rams defense looks great. Justin Tucker is the best kicker in football. And I do think Josh Gordon is going to get a bigger slice of the New England pie at some point in the year. And I also really like DK Metcalf, and I think the Titans should have drafted him. And I picked up Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay, so I think that should be something interesting to keep an eye on moving forward. So number 4, though, A. Brown v. Board of Education, a former champion. You're going to see a little string of former champions right here. So Dustin, of course, won 3 years ago. You look at his team, he's got a lot of really solid picks here. Julio's playing well. Travis Kelce's playing well. Robert Woods, 54th right now, but I think that every Rams receiver is eventually going to get theirs. And Brandon Cooks has kind of had his. Cooper Kupp's kind of had his. It's Robert Woods' time. The Vikings defenses look good at times. They're playing at Chicago, who's struggling right now, so there's a lot of room for points there. Crosby, 20th right now, even after putting up 10 points. I do think Green Bay is going to get things figured out, and they look a little bit better each week. Also really like Sterling Shepard with Daniel Jones under center for the Giants. Josh Jacobs has been a little disappointing. If he gets it sorted out, Dustin seems is looking really, really good. So the other one of our former champions slides into number 3 here. So Brandon is the reigning champion after he beat me in the finals last year due to some bullshit with Todd Gurley getting sat at the very last minute. Lamar Jackson looks awesome. Ezekiel Elliott looks awesome. That 8th position ranking is really misleading because he just hasn't gotten in the end zone yet, and it's going to happen. James Conner, 30th right now for running backs, but that'll get better as the Steelers figure things out. They are going to have to lean on him a little bit more with Ben being gone, so it doesn't give him quite as much running room, but I think Mason Rudolph has proven that he's capable, and Pittsburgh just has to figure out what to do with that. Keenan Allen has been a monster for the Chargers. Brandon Cooks, pretty good points in 2 weeks, one really low week, but I think that he'll be good. TJ Hawkinson, I wasn't very high on him from the jump. I know he put up really good points, I think, in week 1, but I think that's probably the most we'll see out of him. So the flex spot is kind of interesting. So I do want to point out something that really gives me a lot of faith in Brandon is the pickups down here. So DJ Shark, who put up obviously a great week, but that's, I think, his second great week in a row. And Will Dissly, who is a huge part of that Seattle offense right now. So 2 really great pickups to make an already good team a little bit better. So the top 2 spots were a little tough. And so I went with Thomas for the second place team. So How Harry is your Douglas slides in here at second. He's got a lot of really good things going for him. Patty Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, Greg Olsen, I think is a great addition. It's unfortunate he didn't have him in there last week or he would have gotten the win. I realized that I put Thomas ahead of Brandon, even though Brandon just beat him. But if you look at Thomas's point totals from the previous 2 weeks, you can't sneeze at them. So I think Thomas's team is really good. Obviously, some concern right here at wide receiver, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley. But he's got a lot of middle-of-the-road running backs, so I think that he could flip those for some of those key positions if he were so inclined. So I think Thomas's team is really, really good. And then that brings us to number 1, the only team remaining, and I think that this is pretty obvious. Blake. Blake has been in the top 2 scoring teams every week. He has beat high-scoring teams in 2 of those weeks, so moving forward, he doesn't have the best of competition. And just looking at it, Patriots, number 1 fantasy defense. Evan Ingram, number 1 fantasy tight end. Dalvin Cook, number 1 fantasy running back. And then his middle-of-the-road players are Alvin Kamara and Deshaun Watson, who have looked amazing. I still think Sammy Watkins is garbage, but as long as he's in there and Tyreek Hill isn't, he's going to put up points. Julian Edelman will get his for New England. And then he really just needs somebody to slide in at flex. Golden Tate will be back after a week. Kareem Hunt will be back later on in the year. Jason Witten's not a bad option at flex. So Blake just has a lot of options. His team is looking super, super good. So that's kind of where we stand for the fantasy teams for the fantasy power rankings. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Tomorrow I'll try to give just a short video, kind of previewing this week's matchups and give you my picks so that you guys know who to cheer against, so that you guys don't have to buy me dinner. Tuning in tomorrow. If you guys have any comments, obviously, first comment should be, hey man, don't let your cat boss you around and tell you to open the blinds. Otherwise, any other comments would be greatly appreciated. Let me know if you guys like the way I did the power rankings. Tell me why you disagree with what you disagree with. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, subscribe to it, tell your friends, and I'll see you guys next time.